Hey, Matt, I will do a follow-on video to the one you did. Yeah, there's a couple of things we need to figure out here. I know that YouTube is a bad place to just start having conversations out of the blue with somebody that you might have some sort of conflicting idea with, because we pigeonhole people into our experiences. Oh, you're treating me like this, then you're one of those kind. And we all tend to do that. So we have to be careful. I'm not coming at this as somebody who is a Jew or as somebody who is I'm not a theist or an atheist. Okay. A theist is somebody who says, here's God, believe it. An atheist says, there's no God, you can't prove it. The seeker says, I don't know what any of you guys are talking about. How can you say you know something when none of you can show anything? Let's go take a look and see. And there's something in the material here that I'm spotting as a pattern that my brain has the capacity to see that for some reason other people can't see. I know that I can see templates and patterns and things that other people are not able to see. I also am so hooked into this that you're actually part of the Jesus material, the blind leading the blind. They'll fall into the ditch. As you're telling people that Enoch is just a waste, there's nothing there. It's a freaking monomyth, for crying out loud. But you know what? You're going to tell me that it is or it isn't, and you're going to have to reference me somewhere else. Why? Because you don't know what a monomyth is and you can't process one. If you could, you would go, oh, shit, that's a monomyth. Where does it start? It starts with Noah. Then it goes to Abraham. We're going to step in next to Moses. Then we've got Ezekiel. We've got Samuel. We've got Daniel. We've got Jesus. All of these are made on a single template that becomes visible only through conceptual understanding. That means we have to get beyond the words. If you're reading a fable, an Aesop's fable, you can't take that at face value. There's a concept in there that must be understood. The story is carrying a concept. In Genesis, in all of the Torah, the exact same thing is happening. Those stories, those ridiculous stories about giving up your wife and people living for 900 years and getting ready to kill your son and your daughters getting impregnated by their father and things like that, those are going to have to make better sense to me than some sort of a magnanimous, oh, this is a wonderful religion to go follow. To break down the metaphor, the people that believe in that religion are the ones who carry the ark. The ones who say it's just crap, there's nothing there, those are whoever your enemy is in any one of the stories, whoever the bad guys are. In Jewish material, who is it? It's the Gentiles. You guys are the non-believers. So anybody who is not a part of the belief is that. However, you know what? There's a third group, a rare group, the few chosen. Many carry the ark, few look inside. I am in that category of people looking inside. I'm not in the category of people worshiping it or denying it. I'm in the category of people saying there's something in here. It's metaphorical. I have the brain that can process it. I'm going to do it. Let's go. There are so many repeating motifs in Genesis, and you use that term and people go, I don't even know what you're talking about. You know, the idea that God continues to return and pick up called people, that things are, I will give this to you and your offspring, as many as stars in the sky or sand in the beach. Those are repeating motifs. I'm scared. I'm going to give my wife up, Sarai, say that you're my sister. And then later on, I'm Abraham and it's Sarah. I'm afraid, so Abimelech is there. I'm going to tell them you're my sister. Then Isaac later, I'm afraid for my life. Tell them you're my sister. There are repeating motifs in here that you look at and go, what is this pattern going on? Now, moreover, when I was a kid, we went to church. I was raised, what I remember is going to church 3 times a week. But I remember being in Sunday school and hearing Bible stories. But I can remember as a child asking questions and getting answers about them. Like, how come 47 and 3 are all the time? It flooded for 40 days, or it rained for 40 days and 40 nights. Israelites, 40 years in the desert. Jesus, 40 days in the wilderness. Jonah, 3 days in the whale. Jesus, 3 days in the tomb. How come these numbers keep repeating over and over again? And I remember that, and no other kids were asking those questions, but I can also remember being told, well, at first I think they didn't, it's just the way it is. I asked enough to where I remember being told that part wasn't important, that what was important is the doctrine of it. that it didn't matter if it rained for 40 days and 40 nights. What really mattered is that the world was bad and that it got flooded out. So I was being steered away from these numbers by people who didn't understand them. I didn't know that then, but I do know back then, in my mind, I remember thinking to myself, well, I'm just a kid and they're adults. But I don't think they're right. I didn't know what was right, but I do remember in my head thinking there's something wrong with this. There's something in the numbers that always got my attention. Now, in fairness to everybody, it's very difficult to see. It really takes a certain something. I can point it out to people who go, yeah, I think I see something there. Meanwhile, I see it so much. It's like you somehow, that's your special power. You're here to see patterns in numbers or something. So I do, and I find them. But as I dig into them more and more, I learn more about them. They actually are really there. So, okay, where am I going with this? All right, so you thank me for making a 20-minute video. What I want to say is this stuff is incredibly deep. What I want to suggest is this. We stop for a minute and think what life was like back then compared to today. Today, you spend a little bit of time with something, and it's like, whew, our time is so valuable because we have so many things going on. But we're living mentally in those modern biases of perception of life. If we could become a fly on the wall in their time, it was nothing like that. The internet wasn't there. Jobs weren't there like that. There were no, you're walking. You get up day to day and you walk to where you work. You're going to be cutting stones or doing textiles or maybe working with cattle or agriculture, digging waterways for, just think of what life would be like back then for an entire lifetime. You're talking, there's no radios, there's no media, there's nothing like that. That these stories, if you had them memorized, and you would, you don't read, you don't write, you have these stories memorized, that we would have them at such an incredibly deep level of comprehension that today we're not touching that. Knowing that Noah's name is repeated 41 times in Genesis, that Sarai's name is 17 times, that Isaac's name is 80. That there's points in time where I know these only because of the work that I'm doing right now and using the computer to look at them. But if you could think about it in modern times and think of the things that you do in your hobbies or something somewhere that you can look at that has a lot of moving pieces and parts or complicated things to it, that eventually you learn it because you know it very well. I'm not a car guy, but I remember a guy one time I worked with I heard him talking to somebody and I was amazed at this. Oh, yeah, I need to get 24 of such and such size of bolt I'm putting chrome ones on my headers. I want to get, and he's just going through off the top of his head and he's rolling off all of these sizes and names. But I can remember when I was mountain biking a lot and things like that and really get into it and building things. I knew the sizes of spokes and all that kind of stuff. At some point you go, you know what? It's not unrealistic to have this story in your head and to know it so well that you know how many times names have been repeated. And as you go through here, you'll see something happening. There's a lot of repeats. That's the story code. We don't know it. But that's the story code. And if we counted when we see those repeats, that's what we start getting into a numbering grid system that becomes very deep. There's something at a deeper level. All right, I've got to say something else, that throughout many hours and hours, years of accumulated hours, absolutely a lot amount of time, I have played with these mentally. I have manipulated them in my mind. I have done thought experiment with these numbers and what is going on with here until what I've got the capacity to do is to take one of these stories and put it in my mind and play it out in my own life experience. That all of these characters and players represent pieces and parts of me, aspects of me, beliefs, doubts, at different times in my life, layers, that there is a sequencing going on. It's why Abram becomes Abraham. It's why if you could see something subtle in the background, Ham is the father of Canaan, but who gets put there? Abram. And then what happens when the calling happens? We got Abraham. Abram and Ham become combined right there. Do we see those things? Do we see that Cain disappears, Tubal emerges, and down the stream we have Tubal Cain? That there are things going on sequentially that are just kind of, they should get the attention. They're verbal clues. They sound funny. Do people live 900 years? Do people live 800 years? Okay, I call it the 7-3 grid. Here's why. All right, you're about to observe something in the Bible that not very many people will ever see or understand. It's very old, but if we look long enough, give it that time, you'll see it emerge. It's not an accident. It's not a fluke. Okay, I'll be using the King James Version, and the reason is because I'm going to be counting things that I want to be left intact. It's not because I prefer the King James Version. It's because it's the farthest upstream I can go and still be in English, where I believe people didn't modify very much. The first time that we see a 3-7 combination is right here at the end of the 7-day well, there's a 6-day creation. On the 7th day God rested. It's overlapped into chapter 2, although from a story perspective, if the chapters and the verses weren't there, and they weren't originally, they were added in by Stephen Langton later in more modern times. He was the Archbishop of Canterbury. He's the one that added them in, but he did so purposefully. Anyway, here he broke up the 2 creation stories. There's 2 creation stories, but right here we have 7th day, and on the 7th day, and God blessed the 7th day. That's where the code shows up. We've got 7 being repeated 3 times. And if you look carefully, Langton made sure to put that verse right there, 3. He made sure to number it 3. Okay, so that's where the 3-7 first begins in the Bible. This, again, it's mental experiment. It's just looking and looking and looking and trying to figure things out. Okay, the next time, we're going to grab that 3 and that 7 and put them in a pile. The next time the 7 a number shows up, it's down here where we've got, if Cain shall be avenged 7-fold, truly Lamech 70 and 7-fold. And from a story perspective, you read through it, you just have to scratch your head and go, well, that's weird. It doesn't even seem to make sense. I don't know what that means. Here's what it means. You take that 7 and you take that 7 repeated twice. You put the 70 in between. You grab the 70 as another number. So you put it on the list. It's going to be simple, but you'd have to have it memorized. It's going to sound weird at first, but it's going to become so consistent. You'll go, oh, okay, yeah, it's got to be. All right, so they're utilizing numbers like that. Now you see that 7, 70, and 7? This is going to open an analog farm. Adam lived, and we've got these 900 years, 800 years, different things going on. We get down here, what do we see that closes it out? A 770 and 7. We've got a 7 and a 70 and a 7 being repeated a second time. From up here where it was, from up here, 7-fold, 70 and 7-fold, and to down here. So now in between, what have we got? There's something weird going on. If the 7 is going to grab a 70. Well, that sounds pretty simple. We get down here, though, and we got, here, let me look at this one, a 900 and a 30. What happens there? I don't get it. Okay, watch this. The 7 was grabbing numbers. 900 is repeated exactly 7 times in Genesis. 900 is being used as a surrogate for a 7 to grab up more numbers. Grab the 30. Grab the 12. Grab the 5, the 10, the 60, the 2, the 60, and the 9. What if we have 800? Exactly 7 times. So what are we going to do? Same thing. It's being used as a surrogate. A 7 and a 7. Well, that sounds nice. 15, 40, 30, 90, 5. Okay, so we're going to be doing that as we go through here. I'm not going to go through it all. We've also got the 60s, the 100s, we get down into the other analog farm, and what we end up doing is gathering up this pool of numbers right here. Now, that may not at all seem significant, except for when you start looking at a couple of things further. It goes deeper. When you research, you find out that these 22 numbers right there are repeated in excess of 6,000 times in the Bible, just the numbers themselves. We're going to begin to see other things like, if you go to, look at the terms here, wine, naked, nakedness, uncovered, covenant. What this is a pure place right here. This is naked, unashamed in the garden. You know, you have to open your mind to the idea that this represents a human life, and that naked, unashamed in the garden represents each person as a child in a happy state before first sin, which is experiencing life and beginning to become hurt. Steps into 8 where circumcision happens. But you see the step from 7 to 8, 10 to 11, 12 to 13, 20 to 21. Why do we do that? Let's go take a look at something. If we go back to Genesis again. I know I'm bouncing all over the place, but I'm going to show you a bunch of pieces that, if you keep looking, this will continue to show up. What you will find here in... Okay, let's go with wine. 12 times. What does that mean? Wine is a good thing. Wine does not mean alcohol. It's a spiritual analog. Wine means, how do you feel? He drank the wine and was drunken and was uncovered within his tent. That was Noah right there. And Ham, the father of Canaan, saw the nakedness of his father and told his 2 brethren within. What is nakedness? 5 times. That's a good thing. Why is that? Spiritually naked. I'm healed. I don't have shame anymore. I got nothing to hide. You can know anything there is to know about me, and I don't care. I don't have anything to fear. I'm naked. Their father was feeling good from his new life experience, was uncovered, and this was spiritually a good thing. So that's how I would read these stories as they go through like that. And to be a little more detailed here, I am Adam and Eve. Each of us is Adam and Eve, and these steps along the way represent our experiences of life, how we have first sin, how we become corrupted, how we begin to have cyclical pain as the birth, the repeating pain in childbirth from something that emerges from us as a result of the decisions. And what happens? We're covering up because we're ashamed. What happens when we become Noah? That's when we become the called person who destroys the early self, and you're naked again. You've gone from your naked, pure state to covered, and after the flood, you're back to naked again. You've completed a cycle right there, but it's going to continue on. It's not going to end right there. Feeling good from his new life experience was uncovered, and this was spiritually a good thing. So that's how I would read these stories as they go through like that. In fact, as we're talking about that corruption thing there, where I'm asking about the, the nature of the first 11 chapters not sounding, that it's not a complete monotheism at that point, but from 12 on it is. And then you had some verbiage variation there. I would still argue that why would it exist only in the first 11 and not the rest of the next 12? My point there is it looks like 1 through 11 was written at one time, and 12 through 50 at least. Different author, different time. It's not a smooth flow. There's different styles. There's the 2 creation stories have different styles. There's 2 callings of Noah, and both of those are the beginning of templates. The creation story is the beginning of human life template, how we come about. The calling of Noah is the beginning of the monomyth, the inner pathway when the calling begins. Both of those 2 templates right there have additions to them, and there's some stitching in the stories going on. When you interpret them, you see that that's what's going on. The point that I'm trying to make, though, is that there is a purpose in that story, and that I am Adam and Eve, and the story steps along the way represents my life and how I learn, how it goes bad, how finally the corruption within me, that corruption that happens, it's an inner corruption. It's not really on the physical earth. It's all analogous. It happens to all of us. When people are screaming and yelling, or they're depressed, or they're angry, or something, somehow their mind is in turmoil, they're not happy, that's it right there. That is the Nephilim. We've had our beautiful daughters of men, which is what? Our early qualities, our joy, our love, our trust. Those have been corrupted. And now we have full of things inside. And how the numbers work to continually show you how the analogs work. What about Sodom? 21. Yeah. What about Sarai? I said that earlier. We know that's 17. 17's a good thing. 17 is pure. All right, now as far as gathering up the analogs, I'm going to stop right there. If you went to Sodom, to the Sodom analog farm, you're going to find out 50, 40, 5, 30, 10, 20s, although those are repeated, that righteousness is repeated 7 times right there. It opens up the analog farm. So they're utilizing number repeats. When you read that and it sounds like a kludge, would you destroy it for the sake of 50 if there were 50 righteous within the city? No, not for the sake of 50 righteous. I wouldn't destroy it for the sake of 50 if there were 50 righteous within the city. Hello, McFly. 50 righteous, 50 righteous, 50 righteous, 50 righteous. That's a clue. Okay, so we're going to put 50 on here, and it's going to show up, and it's going to be part of that. But watch what happens as we move down our list here. I'm going to take this list and start repeating stories. As I get down into the story of Adam and Eve first, that's where the 3 and 7 starts. And their life starts on chapter 3. Abram and Sarai. Abram is 75. Sarai is 17. 70 and 5, you can combine those numbers. If you combine them, if you say you can combine them, it's okay. And look where it is, chapter 12. Micro and macro going on. Isaac and Rebekah. Isaac is 40 years old. His name is repeated 80 times. Rebekah is 30 times. This is telling us that this is a restart in a pure state. Where is it? Chapter 25, verse 20. Notice they would also be put in a famine like Abram was. All right, and it should be evident to anyone that if we had it memorized, we would know things like, in this verse right here, and Lamech married 2 wives. One was Adah, and the name was Zillah. He took 2 wives. But we would know that if we had this memorized, Lamech, his name is repeated 10 times, which means that he fits in the category of a good thing. He married 2 wives. One of them was Zillah. Zillah's name is repeated exactly 3 times. So Zillah's a good thing. If we follow the story, we're going to find out that Lamech is a part of a consciousness, and Zillah and Adah are 2 split parts that we could go. What happens if we look at Adah? 8 times. So if we follow the story, we're going to find out whoever authored it is going to make sure to let you know if there's a secret in here. Adah's the bad direction, Zillah's the good direction. And that is different analogs, but conceptually the same as the Cain and Abel split. All of it is us. You have to know how to read these things. They're very old. They're very unfamiliar to us. All right, air conditioning kicking on. It's going to get hot. What happens if we jump outside of Genesis then? Let's start doing that and take a look around. Let's take a wander through Abrahamic material with this group of numbers. I did not do a complete job of showing how those are gathered. It is huge. It takes a long time. The video is already going to be big. Okay, let's grab that group of numbers and wander around. We go to Job and we start right off. He's got 7 sons and 3 daughters. We had Adam and Eve, 7 and 3. Abram and Sarai, 75 and 17. Isaac and Rebekah, 40 and 30. 7 sons and 3 daughters, Job. All of those numbers are from that exact same number pool. All of them. All right, we can go anywhere, but I'm going to jump to Ezekiel because it's got numbers right off the bat here that are fun to look at. Ezekiel is a monomyth. Here's how we can see some things. First of all, we see the 30th and the 4th. We have those on our list. We've collected those in Genesis, 30 and 4. We have 5 repeated 3 times here. This one could be completely coincidence, but 5 was just repeated 3 times right there in the Sodom analog farm. Chebar is a river that we have to cross. So right off the bat, I'm seeing, okay, we're in a pure state, or we're a called person, but we're behind a river. There's a crossing that we've got to make. If we come over here and check for Chebar, if we had this memorized, we would know that Chebar being repeated 8 times exactly is a bad place. That's like we're going to have to cross the Red Sea or go through the clashing rocks or something like that. The river Styx, there it is. There's a Chebar open. And what happens? We connect with God. The calling occurs. The word of the Lord came expressly to the priest, the son of Buzi, in the land of the Chaldeans, by the river Chebar, and the hand of the Lord was there upon him. So right here we just had a calling happen from somebody that is a called person that is standing by a threshold that is a bad place they're going to have to cross. Now it goes through and it gets pretty deep into some other things that I'm just going to skip. This is where people try to make that spaceship thing emerge. Those ancient alien goofballs. What I'm also going to do is move down here and get into, right in the beginning of chapter 3, there's a macro happening right there. More, he said unto me, Son of man, eat what you find, eat this scroll, eat the roll, and go speak to the house of Israel. I opened my mouth, and he caused me to eat that roll. So here we have an oddball thing going on. Did that really happen? Here, eat this roll. And he said to me, the Son of Man, cause your belly to eat and fill the bowels with this roll that I give you. Then did I eat it, and it was in my mouth as honey for sweetness. Okay, we have to look at these as metaphors and as spiritual or as mental processes. What am I doing if I'm eating this roll? I'm learning what to do. I'm developing an understanding of how to turn inward. And I'm becoming a part of it. This would be the supernatural aid in other types of material. This is learning what to do. Okay, so for me personally, there's a point in my own comprehension where I look at this and go, I see a monomyth because it's following it a certain sequence. And also, it is using a common numbering system that we can find in Genesis in 3 analog forms. But stick around to the end. We're going to find out that same numbering pattern is visible in Babylonian works before Genesis. All right, what happens if we jump over to Joshua? We're going to find some things in here that are going to sound different. It's very hard to see how these are the same thing. First of all, we're going to have something down here that says, this book of the law shall not depart out of your mouth, but you shall meditate therein day and night, that thou may observe to do according that is all that is written therein. So like in the other one, eating a roll, here we have a book in your mouth. There's something that you have to eat, consume, and you're going to be prosperous in that way. You're going to have to pass over this Jordan. There's a Jordan River within 3 days. 3 days pass over the Jordan. But look at what you're going to do. You're going to pass through the host. If we went up here to look for Jordan, Jordan is 70 times. That was actually the first number after the 7-3 gathered up in Genesis, isn't it? That's when the 70 and 7 for preservation of Cain. But what happens to the host? Pass through the host. That sounds like a portal there, or a crossing of the threshold. 8 right there. So we've got to pass through the host to 8. Okay, so what I'm going to suggest is if you understand how to interpret them conceptually, and you look through and you understand that there are words in here that are being used as certain analogs, that you can look up those analogs and they will coincide with a numbering pattern that was established in Genesis. This is maintained all throughout Abrahamic material. Let's jump to the book of Matthew in the New Testament and take a look at something. Okay, and I want to emphasize at this point, since we left the Old Testament and went into the New Testament, I don't care. If somebody's going to say, you know what, this is not my material, this is not what is there, I don't care. There's something that's bigger than Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. Listen carefully. It's bigger than Judaism, Christianity, or Islam. So if you're stuck saying my Judaism is right, or my Christianity is right, or my Islam is right, you're the carrier. You don't know what's inside. Okay. Abrahamic material being maintained this way tells me that there is somebody that is not Jewish, Christian, or Muslim in the background that is smarter than Jewish, Muslims, and Christians. The reason I say that is because you didn't start bouncing around like this and you get people saying, you know what, I don't accept that material. I discount it out of hand. And when that happens, you're just going to limit what you see, period. Okay, so I know you've already said, yeah, there are things that just don't fit because they're not part of Judaism. And I'm going to tell you something. There's something bigger than Judaism. And there's something bigger than Christianity and bigger than Islam. That's all I can say. And that not many people are going to see it. So if you think your religion's right, not only do you not understand other religions, you don't understand what your own has. The book of the generation of Jesus Christ, the son of David, the son of Abraham. This is Matthew. I'm going to first show you the number cross-referencing. How many times does 3 show up in Matthew? 12 times. Okay. How about 7? 12 times. How about 12? 12 times. It's a tight grid, ladies and gentlemen. Jesus Christ, the son of David. Who's David, a good guy? 17 times. Same as Sarai. The number was gathered up in the flood. Repeated twice. Abraham. 7. Got our 7-3 right up front. Isaac. 4. Jacob. 6. Judas. Good guy or bad guy? 8 times. Do you see something emerging in the numbering? I don't have to keep going through that one. All right, this is Christian's highly touted Revelation, King James Version. This is the one that tells them Jesus Christ is coming back any day now, even though Jesus Christ said 2,000 years ago, I will return before some of you have even died. They don't get the metaphor. Christ returns every time somebody follows his path. It's like a Buddha. They're waiting for a physical return instead of a metaphorical spiritual return. Okay, as we get into it, what do we find? Jesus Christ repeated 7 times. You see, I did work ahead before on this one. God, Jesus Christ, blessed, churches, throne, 40. All of these are good things, but look what we find down here. Dead, 18. 18 is on our list of derogatory things, but we get further down here. Look at Satan. If we put Satan in here, there we have it 8 times. Devil. 8 times. This is Revelation. Let's take a look at something in the Babylonian Enuma Elish. Remember, we got Satan 8 and Devil 8 right here. All right, I've got the Timothy J. Stephanie translation up on my desktop here. And what I'm going to do is the same thing here. We know that there's devils in here in the Babylonian creation myth, the Enuma Elish. We just had it repeated 8 times exactly, following a pattern of evil. Like that would be the day of first sin. That would be the day that you need to have circumcision, cutting off what's there. All symbolic. All right, we've got the Enuma Elish, which is older than Genesis, presumably. I think it's maybe contemporaneous with the first 11 chapters. Devil. 8 times. Does that sound familiar? Do you know who the bad element is in here? The Lady Huber raised her voice, verbalizing the curse. She's the one who made all, produced an unfailing weapon. She brought big snakes with piercing teeth and vicious fangs. So Lady Huber is the evil element here. Devil is something that is created by Lady Huber. Lady Huber. Exactly 8 times. The called hero is Marduk. Marduk is the one that's going to come in and do all of the destroying of all of the evil. Marduk's name is repeated exactly 41 times here in the Enuma Elish. If we go into Genesis, the first called hero is Noah. Let's go take a look at something there. All right, back in Genesis, we're going to look for Noah's name. 41 times. Now I'm going to say there are things in here that should get your attention. This is code. These are the generations of Noah. Noah was a just man and perfect in his generation, and Noah walked with God. And Noah begat 3 sons, Shem, Ham, and Japheth. At some point, you wonder why they're repeating Noah so many times. You're going to run into it. I mean, it should sound funny. It would be like if a friend of yours was talking to you about a visit with me, and they're saying, I visited Dan, and Dan and I went to lunch. So when Dan and I went to lunch, Dan ordered up something here, and then Dan paid for it all, but Dan drove his car. It was his car, Dan's car, and Dan drove it. You'd be like, oh, okay, why are you throwing it out like that? I'm exaggerating it a little bit, but you're going to find places where it's righteous 50, righteous 50. You're going to find where right after the flood, where God is keeping a covenant 7 times with Noah. There's going to be repeats going on that you should look at those and go, that is the code. If I had that memorized, the code is verbal. It's in the numbers. It's in the repeats. Where else is it going to be? If it's in the story, and the story is where everything is, the code has to be in the story. All right, I'm going to go to the Song of Solomon, and you see why this takes so long. If you watch and I continue to do this, I can assure you I'm just bouncing off of each one of them very lightly. We come into the song, which is the Song of Solomon's, and we're going to find out Solomon His name is repeated exactly 7 times. Start reading through here. Let him kiss me with the kisses of his mouth, for thy love is better than wine. Wine is something I'm always going to look for because wine is a component part of the spiritual teaching and of their culture. It's a commonly used analog, which is used for a spiritual feeling. Wine. 6 times. It's on our list. It's a good thing. Ointments. Good ointments. Ointments. What is an ointment? That sounds like healing. Exactly 3 times. I like that. That's her 3-7 grid. What else do we have in here? I want to find some things that pop out. Here's flock and flock. Flocks. There's 2 of them there. And they're on verse 7. And flock repeats 7 times. Vineyards. Seven times. Okay, what you're going to find is that there is a background numbering that is existing for a reason. What else do we have? We've got fair, pleasant. What is fair? Fairest is 3. Hard to say when they're compound like that. It gets pretty deep. Okay, so we'll stay away from the ones like that for now. What else do we have? Is among the daughters. What is daughters? Daughters are what got corrupted in Genesis. If we use daughter without the plural S on it, what we're going to find out is that it's 11 times. So this story is all full of analogs that represent something about my life. What are these daughters and why are 11? Why are daughters bad? Remember in Genesis when the sons of God came down and went into and corrupted the daughters of men and giants resulted. That's metaphoric for the idea that what are the daughters of ourselves? Our inner qualities as children. You don't judge anything. You sit in a sandbox and some lady's over there that's overweight, smoking a cigarette and eating Doritos, and there's some lady over there in a BMW that's all fancy, and they're just radically different things. You might look at today and judge them and see something there as a kid. You don't. Either one of them offers you something, and you'd be just as happy. You'd sit on either one of them's lap, not knowing, not caring. We're very different as children than we are as we grow and we develop and we start becoming judgmental. So what happens is that those early qualities, those non-judgmental qualities have been corrupted, and that's what that represents. And how bad do they get? How bad do we act out? How bad do we judge? How bad do we feel against something or someone? It's not about a people, it's about a life experience. This is playing out up here. What is the enemy within? It's going to be an experience. It's going to be unresolved memories. So what is going on here for me is that is unfolding again continuously as we move through the material. That they're using a 7-3 as a numbering system to begin to repeat a pattern that is, we can already see repeating patterns in there, but the numbering system helps shore it up in a manner that's visible. We can count how many times 3 appears, 7 appears, all those. We can continue to do that. However, at a deeper layer, those numbers mean something on the template as far as steps in a human life psyche. When you're feeling good, when you're feeling bad, when you're corrupted, when you're turning back inward, when you're ready to go defeat something, destroy Sodom, which is an early belief system. All of these are what are built into this story, and that the numbering system, if you look at it, you will see that the numbers that are gathered up in those analog forms continue to support the flow of that story. I don't know what to call it, a mechanism. It's a template. That's what it is. It's a sequence that's happening. If we were to look at sequences, if you knew things like the voyage of the Argo and how that story works, how the voyage begins, if you get to the point where they get up to the clashing rocks and you put that side by side with Exodus at the point where they get through the Red Sea and start lining things up, what we're going to begin to see something. Both of them are saved out as children. Now, they tell about an entire Moses life cycle up to the time he's called. Jason, they don't do that. He just comes back when it's time for the calling. Moses gets the calling on Mount Horeb when God says, you got to go. The denial is when he's like, I don't even speak right. Then he gets a supernatural aid, the staff. So it's fitting the profile automatically of a monomyth, but that's beginning right there. There's things happening before then, though, that is not in the monomyth, but you can look at them yourselves after they were saved out. But let's put a couple of things together. When Jason starts sailing, they struggle to leave this island of women. Well, there's different versions that made it. One is the island of old gods, one is the island of women. And in these cases, and I talked about that in the other video, about how that's where Hercules told them, we got to move on. Hercules is a hero, Jason's a hero, but they're both not going to go through the clashing rocks. One of them is going to exit before then, in the same way that Enoch exits before the Genesis story. Those are story network points where monomyths are branching off at a time before the religions were as important as they are today, in a time when the story network was fine and a belief was smaller, more local. We have morphed a lot. The religions and our belief in it has evolved a lot. Okay, anyway, what we have right there is a struggle to leave the past. This is a part of the element that is a part of the template that I've identified, but Joseph Campbell has not. You don't find it in his. There is a struggle. And if you look at your own life and you have habits where you've got something that you need to leave behind, you've got relationships, you're caught up in marriages or lifestyles or something that you're like, my God, what is it going to take to get out of this? I am so nested here. What the heck? It's such a struggle to get out. Or habits where it's like, I got to quit. I'll go back one more time. I got to quit. Okay, tonight's the last night, but that's it. Next day, that's it. I'm done. Then, okay, one more night. We get into these repetitive patterns of failure. We can see this where they struggle to leave the island, and Hercules finally tells them they have to go. When we go over to Exodus, what do we see? Pharaoh says, you can go. No, you can't. You can go. No, you can't. God sends plagues to make Pharaoh decide to let him go, but then hardens Pharaoh's heart and tells him, no, he can't again. So there we have this internal struggle. I got to go. No, you can't. I got to go. No, you can't. So this cyclical, this struggle to leave element is there, but at the same time, Phineas's food on another island is getting defiled daily. He is starving. He's the seer. He's not going on the vision, but he's a part of us that knows what to do, but is starving. His food is getting defiled daily. In the movie, there's this beautiful line. Zeus, I sinned one time. Why must you punish me every day? I go, oh boy, that's a wonderful thing right there. I don't know if that ever comes from somebody's book or not, but that's exactly what it is. When you look at what happened, you're like, whatever I'm dragging with me, it's this cyclical thing. The punishment is there all the time. And, okay, so finally what happens is they do leave. They sail through the clashing rocks with Hera's help and barely make it. The Israelites escape Pharaoh, go through the Red Sea with God's help, barely making it. You begin to see those parallel elements, but they're conceptual. If you look at them as factual, you're going to look at them and say they're different things. But if you look at them as conceptual, you're going to say, yeah, that there is something there. And that's a pattern that is visible without the numbering system even being there, and the numbering system just absolutely smack dab shores it up for me. This is not really one of those things you can say that's not there. Once you see it, you're like, the best you can do is try to describe why it's there. I tried to present enough in this video to show that it's not an accident, but even at that, you see I barely touched each one of them. If you see how many videos I got up, I have done hours on this same stuff right here, showing how this repeating pattern is just all through Abrahamic material, not just the Bible. Not just the Bible. There's something bigger going on when you think about it. That means that these stories are being written by somebody bigger than our biggest religious leaders. Or our biggest religious leaders know something that they're not telling us. I want to look behind the curtain. I see something. I want to know what it is. I know that there are people who are, it's so big and it's so complex, they're going to say, it's not there. When in all reality, it is there. You just can't see it. You have to be able to sort it in your mind and be able to see what's there and play it out in the psyche. It takes a certain long practice thing that takes a lot of work to get into. You know, understanding that Buddha's karma is cause and effect, and that Jesus is the measure you mete unto others is likewise meted unto you is cause and effect. This starts off in analogous verbiage in the first creation story on day 3. Ironically, isn't it? Where cause and effect happens. The seed produces the tree, which produces more seed, which produces more of itself. Cause and effect from the garden. What is the garden? It's the garden within. You have to get to that point. Buddha telling you to seek emptiness, a Christian would say that's stupid. Then they turn right around and say, blessed are the poor, for yours is the kingdom of God. Or blessed are the poor in spirit. Those are both the same thing. We want to be empty or devoid of this pile of judgments. That's the mote in the eye also. This teaching is going to be a very personal inner teaching. Those are all Jesus things. I know that that's not Jewish stuff. The Jewish stuff is much older and a lot thicker. In fact, in the Jewish stuff, what we're going to want to do is destroy the world, destroy Sodom, destroy Gomorrah, destroy all of the elements that are the negative parts that have become corrupt about our lives. All of those represent parts of us. In simple, modern Jesus vernacular, those are the same thing as the mote in the eye. Whether they are out something from the environment or not doesn't matter. They're grabbed up and used as components to create this flow, this story, this template. And it's not just a made-up myth for the sake of a made-up myth. It's built very specifically on that human life template. And it's showing a pathway in. It's very professionally and very artfully done. It's not a joke. It's high-level stuff. The Jesus stuff is honestly quite easy, much easier to understand. Anyway, okay, that's what I wanted to say on this video. Again, I could go through any book and just continue to demonstrate. You could focus on one book and just go through the numbers, and it continues to emerge. There is a structure. And you know what? If you go to the Gnostic material and the apocryphal material, it's still there. It's still there. I think it would be easy to try and look at that as something nefarious, but I think there's something different going on. I think that there's like a school of this teaching, and that if you follow this number sequence, if you know what this numbered pattern sequence is, and as long as you build your story on this sequence, it's going to fit the criteria of being on that template. And so when we're seeing small apocryphal things like Susanna or whatnot, it's a very short, like 56 verses period or something. That might be a shorter one than that. But it follows the same numbering patterns, the 7s, the 3s, the repeating, the 12s, all of that. You can look at, and these are written, in some cases, thousands of years apart from each other in different parts of the world by people, standard people writing Gnostic material. What does that tell you at some point? That there's something going on that was once well known, much more known, that once in a while gets out of the bag. And they scramble to put it back, to kind of shut it back down. In fact, let me just pull that up. I say this, but let me spend the time with it. This is Susanna. It is 64 verses. There dwelt a man in Babylon named Joachim. That should be the called person. Oh. Exactly 6. All right, apocryphal Susanna. I want to show you a couple of things. Do you see right here in verse number 3, her parents were also righteous and taught their daughter according to the law of Moses. Down here in 7, now when the people departed away at noon, Susanna went into her husband's garden to walk. Susanna and husband, Adam, Eve, 7, 3. This is verse 7. Husband is repeated 3 times. We have our male-female 7-3 beginning right there. That's kind of like pretty obvious, isn't it? What is law of Moses? 2. Interesting. That kind of sounds like that book you eat in the beginning, doesn't it? And by that I mean from earlier in the video, that eat this roll and eat this book, keep the words in your mouth, you consume them, word of Moses. Yeah, there's some sort of an admonition to follow a certain set of rules. Now you see what happens in Genesis between 7, Garden of Eden, naked, unashamed. That's the 7-3 pure point that you move into first sin. That is the life experience that leads you astray. What do we have right here in number 8? And the 2 elders saw her going in every day and walking, so that their lust was inflamed toward her. So what I'm going to read out of this is in step number 8 is that though she has not participated, she is being looked at by sin. Life experience is looking after her. Door. Door 8 times. What is that? That's the threshold. That is, what did we run into the other one? Going through the, there was 8. Going through the host or something like that. Going through the doors. We're going through something. A negative place. All right, so there's going to be something that's going on in the background that's very difficult to see. It's going to take a certain mental processing that I believe they were using in order to create and to live through these stories. But I think also that they're made in such a way that the people that can't do what I'm doing might nevertheless hang on to it as a belief system because it makes them feel better. And other people who don't agree with them will deny it. So there's this layer of it's true, it's not true going on, while there's a third way to go where you say, you know what, there's something cryptic in there, that if you understand it, there's something that becomes interactive. Both of you guys are, I'm saying there's something different, that somebody put this together on a template, and that template is meaningful to me, and if I can extract what that is, then I find peace in my life and my connection with God. All right, whatever that may be, the higher awareness, a connection to a peace, to something greater than myself. Okay, well, that's it for this video. There's something big going on, and it looks to me like there were schools, actually. The Susanna looks like somebody's thesis paper. If you read it, what it comes out to is like this. It comes out like if you read in the Garden of Eden where Eve partook of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil and got kicked out. This one is going to read like somebody who partook of the tree of the knowledge of life. It takes a different course. She does not get corrupt. Where Eve and Adam do, Susanna and her husband do not. So that it took different directions there. But it's following the same numbering pattern. It's just really weird. But we don't know it because we just don't know it well enough. All right. Comments? I'm always up for puzzling over a mystery. All right. Take care.